As you go through this course in the various sections here, 101, 102, 103, and Excel macros and VBA, I've provided some exercise files that you can download and you can use to follow along with me. Now, in this 101 section, the foundation, the basics of Microsoft Excel, I've supplied some exercise files. You can find them attached to this lecture that you're watching right now. Go into the lecture panel, just somewhere right above my head. You're going to find it just to the right of the video player. But attached to the lecture, you'll see a resources button where you can download any files that are associated with this section of the course. Now, for the 101 section, I supplied some exercise files, and you can download them and you can use them. But what I would recommend is follow along with me and build the exercise files yourself through this section of the course, the 101 section. In the 102 and the 103, download those files. I'm not going to expect you to build a bunch of lists and whatnot. So use those files as you get deeper in the course. But for right now, I would recommend you can leave those alone unless you really want them. I'm offering them for you. Or you can just build them yourself, and that's what I'd recommend. So, but they're right there. They're available for you. Make sure you download any files that you feel like you need. And let's get into the course and start to master Microsoft Excel. As you go through the course, you're going to be marking lectures as completed. Actually, the system will mark the lectures as completed for you. You can see just behind my head there, we've got the lecture panel, where you're going to find all of the lectures that you'll be participating in as you go through this course. As a lecture is watched, it will be automatically checked as completed. In the top right corner of the Udemy page, the course page, you'll find your progress. From there, you can keep track of how many lectures you've gone through and how many lectures you have to go to complete the course. Now, once you've completed the course 100%, you will then be presented with an email from Udemy that gives you a link to your certificate of completion. Now, you can also find this by going to the review option right below the video screen. Go to overview. And if I scroll down, you'll see a portion in there for certificates, and you can find your certificate of completion from there. Again, once you complete the course 100%. So, I'm excited. Let's get in there. Housekeeping done. Let's start jumping in and mastering Microsoft Excel. The first thing we want to be able to do before we get in and start to work within Microsoft Excel is we got to open up the application. Now, I'm going to make this a quick little introduction just to opening Microsoft Excel. This is maybe something you've done multiple times. If not, here's a couple ways you can open up the application itself. So right away, I've got a shortcut sitting on my desktop. I can just give that a double click. Now, you might look at your desktop and say, well, I don't know where Excel's at. Do I currently have it loaded on my system? Well, if we need to find Excel, we can go down into our Start menu. And here I'm working inside of Windows 10. So all I need to do is either search this vertical scroll here and go look for Excel. There it is. I can launch it here. Or if I just start typing on my keyboard, it'll search my computer and I can find Excel right there. So there are multiple approaches to launching the application, just like you would launch any other application. Word, PowerPoint, Acrobat, whatever. You just double click the icon, opens up the application, or go search for it inside of your Start menu. So let's go ahead and do that first. Let's get Excel up and running on our computer. Now, because I have the shortcut on my desktop, I'll give that a double click, and this will launch my current version of Microsoft Excel. So let's get that up and running. I want to encourage you to follow along with me as we go through these lectures. I found that the best way to learn something new is to right away get your hands in there and start to work with it. And the quicker that you can apply the concepts that we cover, the better it's going to be for you. So let's get Excel open, and then we'll jump into the next videos and get familiar with the interface itself. Now, when you first open up the more recent editions of Microsoft Excel, The starting interface is referred to as the splash screen, or the introductory page to the Office application, in this case, Excel. Now, when I first open up Excel, I get taken to the screen here where I've got some larger icons on the left-hand side. I've got Home, New, Open, and I've got a few little links down at the bottom. Now, on the right-hand side, I've got a blank workbook. That's what we're going to start out with, just a blank standard Excel workbook, something that we can start to create on our own. You've got some little tutorials or tours of some new features that were introduced in your current version of Excel. And then you've got the recent documents and templates that you can get into. Templates being over here on the right-hand side. Now, this is newer. This interface right here, I'm using the Office 365 subscription. So I have the latest version of Excel open in front of you right now. Now, what you might have on your screen when you first launch Excel might be a couple of things. One, you may have got a blank workbook right away, already open up on your screen. It might look like this, right there. Just launched Excel, and you've got a blank workbook. It may look like, if I go to File, New, it might look something like this right here. Now, just a heads up, when you first open up Excel, your interface might look a little bit different, just based version that you're working on. If you're on a Mac, it's going to look a little bit different beyond what you're seeing here as well. That's one of the biggest differences between the Windows version of Excel and the Apple or Mac version of Excel is really the interface. The features that we'll be discussing here are going to apply to from the 2003 version even, way back when, 2003, 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016. Everything that we talk about is going to apply to any of those versions. So you're going to feel very comfortable. But there might be some little tweaks, such as this startup screen, the splash screen, when you first launch the application itself. Okay, so just a little heads up there, but nothing big. Okay? If you've got any questions, if it's like, hey, I didn't see that outside of my application, or how come you don't have this, I have it inside of mine, go to the Q&A section of the course and ask your questions. Right? Even supply snapshots, screenshots of what you're seeing, because that'll help me better understand perhaps what version you're working in, and I can guide you through where the command might be or how the buttons are a little bit different. So again, just a heads up that the interface itself might look a little bit different when you first open up the application. But nonetheless, you're still going to get to all the same features. So this is your startup screen. It's great. It's going to give you several options to be able to work with new documents or existing documents. Take a moment, try exploring, just take a look at what you have open in front of you. And then we'll jump into the next video and we'll create one of our own workbooks and get a deeper understanding of the Excel interface. We're going to do two things during this lecture here. One, we're going to create a brand new blank Excel workbook. This is going to be the main file type that you'll work with as you venture and you work inside of Excel itself. The second thing that we're going to do is take a look at the interface that makes up the working environment that you're going to be all over inside of as you work inside of an Excel workbook. So, one, we've got the Excel window open. We just launched Excel. I've got it right here. I'm currently looking at the startup screen. Again, this is the newer edition of Excel, but if you're on an older one, you're going to see some similar stuff here. I'm going to go into blank workbook. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'll click on it once, and this will launch the rest of the Excel interface. And now I've got my Excel file or my Excel workbook open in front of us. Now, let's break down the interface here a little bit. This is the second thing that I want to discuss. Really just get into how the window is laid out, kind of the main areas of the Excel application. And this is something that we're going to get into much, much more in depth as we go through the various features that make up the Excel application. But at this point, just kind of a high level of the interface itself. Now I'm going to remove my face off the screen because I want you to be able to see the incomplete window here, because right now my big fat head is kind of blocking a portion of the screen here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that, and I'll be back there. All right, so first off, towards the top of the screen, we have, towards the top left corner of our screen, we have what's called the Quick Access Toolbar. These are some common shortcuts, common commands that you can quickly get access to. So on my version here, I currently have quick access to the save, and I've got a few other buttons here currently not active for me, but I've got undo, redo, and the autosave feature. If you're using Office 365, just have a standalone edition of Microsoft Excel, you'll see the autosave button there, right? And now I've also got a touchscreen monitor that I could potentially use. So I've got an option here for whether I wanted to view this as a standard interface or more geared towards a touchscreen environment. I'll just give you a quick preview here. If I give that button a click, currently I'm in mouse mode, but if I go to touch mode, everything just gets a little bit bigger, buttons spread out a little bit, kind of my big fat fingers are going to be able to tap on those buttons. All right, I'll go back to standard mouse mode there. Now, you may not have that button. It just depends on if it recognizes that you are compatible with some touchscreen device. All right, now, again, that's your quick access toolbar. We're going to talk some more about that. But here are just some default buttons giving you quick, easy access to common commands. Now, right below that, you have what's called the ribbon. Now, if you've been working inside of Microsoft Excel or working inside of other Office applications, you're going to be familiar with the ribbon. This has been around since the 2007 edition of the Office applications, not just Excel, but Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, and so on. Now, of course, when you go into different applications, Excel versus Word, you still got the ribbon, but there are different features there, of course, right? You're going to get different commands for the different applications, but the idea is the same. It's your ribbon. It's full of tabs or buttons towards the top. I've got File, Home, Insert, and so on. Now, if you compare your screen to my screen, you may see some on my screen that you don't have on yours. As an example, I've got the Developer tab here. That's one that you actually have to activate yourself. It doesn't come by default. And that's one that we will get into much, much later within the course as we get into macros and VBA or Visual Basic for applications. So just keep in mind that you may see some on my screen that aren't on yours, at least at this point. We will talk about those, as well as Power Pivot, one that you may not see on yours as well. All right, but the ribbon is just full of all the commands. I've got Home, and they've broken up the Home tab into various groups. Got the clipboard for copy paste, got my font commands, alignment, numbers, styles, and so on. If I go to formulas, I've got things like my function library. We're going to talk all about functions, creating name ranges, getting into auditing your formulas, and so on. So I highly recommend taking a quick moment here and digging through the ribbon interface. Now, again, if you're on an earlier version, if you're on 2013, 2010, or if you're on a Mac, the interface is going to be a little bit different. Buttons might look a little bit different. Some of the buttons might be more colorful than others. Microsoft, they make updates to the application pretty regularly, and they like to change button colors and whatnot on you. So, but that's your ribbon there. Okay. Now, the next portion right below the ribbon, we have what's called your formula bar. It's actually got two pieces. I have what's called the name box, and then the actual formula entry or formula bar right here, this area right here. Now, just as an FYI, I've seen this happen to people before, so I just want to make you aware of it. Sometimes that doesn't show up, or you may accidentally turn it off. If I go to my View tab, there's a series of check marks, and one of them is called the Formula Bar. So it's your View tab at the top. Then I've got the Show section, and I've got Formula Bar. So if I do this, if I go ahead and uncheck Formula Bar, you'll see that that bar goes away. I'll turn it back on. So it's a very important formula bar or toolbar for us to use, so I recommend leaving it on, but it does take up a bit of space on your screen, so if you really don't need it, you can turn it off. And also, if I step back for a moment, go back to the ribbon here, something else you can do, if I double-click a tab, let's see I'm on the Insert tab, and I double-click Insert, this will minimize the ribbon. Kind of smashes it up. Again, I like to show that one, because it does take up a lot of space on your screen, and maybe you want to get rid of it. Two, it might happen to you by accident. Okay? You just give it a double click again, and it'll come back. Okay? So, just an FYI, you can turn off and turn on elements of the interface, because it is a pretty busy interface here. So let's go ahead and stop right there for a moment. I want you to take a moment, go through the ribbon, get just a little familiar with the various tabs you got there. Take a look at the View tab, see how you can turn off the formula bar. Also, give one of the tabs a double click just to minimize that ribbon, and then open it right back up by double clicking on it again. Now, there's a few more things I want to take a look at the interface, but I like to keep my videos short and have it to the point. So let's get into that right there. Just get a feel for it, and then let's jump into the next video and we'll break down more of the interface here. I want to show off a pretty neat tool that's kind of lesser known, kind of hidden, but a really neat tool. And this is the Quick Access Toolbar. It's part of the Excel interface, and it's been around since the 2007 edition of Excel. Now, it's going to look a little bit different on the Mac version of Excel, but it's going to carry the same concept, and the way that you interface with the Mac is going to be a bit different as well. I've answered the question a few times in the Q&A section for the Mac user. So if you are a Mac user, you can take a look at the Q&A section, and you'll find an answer to how to customize this on the Mac edition. So this is the Quick Access Toolbar. It's located in the top left corner of the screen. You can currently see I have things like Save, Undo, and Redo up there. It's the Quick Access Toolbar. It's supposed to be quick, easy access, direct access to some of the more common for everyone, or more common features for you. So that Quick Access Toolbar is something you can customize. If I go to the little down arrow here, it will give me a handful of other common commands. Let's say, for example, I print quite a bit within Excel. So in order for me to print, I currently have to go to File, Print, and do my settings and print. That's at bare minimum, that's like 3 clicks in order for me to print something. Well, here, I just have to go to the little down arrow, turn on Quick Print, and now I got my Quick Print button right there. One button press, off to the printer. That's simple. Don't have to go to File, Print, one button press. Another one that I like is the sorting commands. I do a lot of sorting in my lists, and in order for me to sort, I have to go to my Data tab and go find the sort commands. Now, that's not huge. It's not a lot of steps. But again, you customize this to commands that you use regularly. It's not something you have to go digging for and go search for and perform multiple clicks. You just have it in a single button press right there. Now, something else you can do. If you find a command on the ribbon, one of the tabs here that you use often, let's say, for example, I go to Formulas, and I've got the Auto Sum button. This is something I use all the time. I'm constantly summing up a range of cells. Well, if I right-click, right mouse button click, I'm going to have an option for Add to Quick Access Toolbar. I can select that, and there it is. Quick, easy access to the sum button, just right there. Customize this toolbar, get all your favorite commands up there, or if you're not quite sure, you're newer to Excel, it's like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to be using yet. Well, as you continue through the course, if you find a command that I'm going to use that, add it to the Quick Access Toolbar. Customize your experience and make your life easier and quicker as you're working inside of Excel. Utilize the Quick Access Toolbar. All right, let's further our conversation about the Excel interface itself. There's a few more things that I want to point out here. So once again, I'm going to remove my head from the screen. Now, we've seen the Quick Access Toolbar. You've got your ribbon directly below that. There's the ribbon right there. You've got the name box and the formula bar right below that. And then down at the very bottom of the screen, we've got what's called the status bar. So let's get that right there. There we go. Now, the status bar is actually one that we pretty commonly overlook because it's kind of small, just kind of out of the way. But we've got some important stuff that can potentially show up there. So I'm going to recommend to you, keep an eye on that. We'll talk about various features that show up and that you can activate inside of the status bar. Right now, we've got over towards the right, you've got your views. Currently, I'm inside of what's called normal view. Right next door to that, you got page layout, and then we have page break preview. These 3 buttons allow you to change the view of your workbook. right? And then to the right of that, you've got a zoom bar that allows you to zoom in and out of the Excel workbook or worksheet itself. Now, these buttons here, the view buttons, are also available to you on the view tab at the top of your screen. If I go back to the view tab, on the left-hand side, we've got workbook views, and you can see that I've got normal, page break preview, and page layout. Those exact same buttons that we saw down at the bottom that are currently behind my big fat head there. So, but that's just a little bit more about the interface, and you will see that change. You will see some other stuff show up on the on the status bar. Just as an example, if I right-click on the status bar, you'll see that there's all sorts of stuff in there. Okay? They're not all showing up for me right now, but once we start working in there, start selecting data, start manipulating data, you will see some other bits of information show up on the status bar. All right. Now, there's one more thing that I want to show off here, just more of the Excel interface. And this really deals with the document you're working within. Now, you'll recall, when I first launched Excel, I told them I wanted to work with a new blank workbook. So you've got the Excel interface, which is really this portion right here, and then the status bar at the bottom of the screen. And then, let's change my color here, you've got the Excel workbook. That's the document that you're going to be working inside of. This is where all your data is going to go. Now, if you're an experienced Excel user, great, you know all about this. If you're newer to Excel, we're going to break this down. We're going to get an understanding of the Excel workbook and understanding what worksheets are compared to the workbook, how to navigate it, how to reference it, and so on. So there's really kind of two pieces. You've got the Excel application interface, and then you've got the workbook itself. All right. So that's kind of fundamental, kind of high level, the Excel interface. We're going to dig into it as we continue working inside of Excel. Again, if you've got any questions, visit the Q&A section of the course, ask your questions there. All right. Hopefully it's going good for you so far. The next thing we're going to do is jump in and get a little bit more understanding about the Excel workbook itself, the main Excel file. All right, let's take a closer look at the Excel workbook and really what makes up the Excel workbook interface. Now, I mentioned that the Excel workbook, or the workbook type, is your main Excel file. That's where you're going to be working in. Now, it's actually got several different pieces of it. Here, I'm looking at the Excel workbook, but I've got what's called a worksheet. Currently, I have a worksheet called Sheet 1. There's a little plus sign right next door to that. You can add additional sheets to the workbook itself. Remember, the Excel workbook's the main Excel file, and within there, you can have multiple worksheets. All right? You currently got one. You can actually have several. They used to limit it to 255 worksheets inside of a single Excel workbook. But as of the latest versions of Excel, it's actually based on the memory of your computer. So you can continue to add worksheets to this, but you're going to get to a point where things are going to start to slow down on you. So 255 is still a pretty good number to not restrict your computer too much, but it is open beyond that as well. And take a look, I'll hit the little plus sign, and this will add an additional sheet. They are exactly the same currently. They're just blank worksheets within my blank workbook. Let's go back to sheet 1. Now, within the sheet, we've got this grid, right? This is just kind of the basics of the structure of an Excel workbook. You've got this grid. This grid is made up of columns, got all your headers there along the top, and rows down the side there, all right? So currently, looking at sheet 1, I am currently inside of a cell, this block right here, called A1. If I click someplace else, here I am, I'm inside a G column, row 11. I currently have cell G11 selected. All right. We can also see this up inside the name box, top of your screen, top left corner of your screen. I click into a cell someplace inside this worksheet, and it'll tell me where I'm currently at, what I can reference that location as. Okay. So this is really your workbook. You got the Excel workbook. It's broken up like a grid. You're going to keep your data inside of columns and rows. You can reference that data by the column header and row header. In this case, F4 is where I'm currently at. And you can have multiple sheets inside of a workbook. Remember, 255 is a pretty good number. That's a lot of worksheets, but you can have loads. Maybe you're going to do a worksheet for each week of the year, or maybe monthly data, and I need a worksheet for each month. Or maybe I got daily reports, so I need 365 of those things to keep track of my daily data. Okay? Whatever it is, I can keep hitting the plus sign to add additional worksheets to the Excel workbook itself. So take a moment, just make it quick, jump into there, get the Excel workbook open in front of you, take a look at the columns, the rows, take a look at the sheets, how you can add additional ones, hit the little plus sign if you like to. In much earlier editions of Excel, you may not have the plus sign. You may have what looks like kind of a little star, a little sun icon, but that's just your new button right there. So just an FYI, if your interface is a little bit different, may not be a plus sign, might be a little different icon there. All right, so that's your Excel interface. If you have any questions, this was just kind of high level, but any questions, go to the Q&A section and ask your questions there. I make it a point to answer every question that comes in within my courses here on Udemy. So, all right, take a look at that, and then we'll jump in and start to get a bit deeper into Excel. Let's take a quick peek at how you would save an Excel document. This is something I'm going to recommend as you go deeper and deeper inside this course and we get into various features and start creating our own workbooks, adding data to it, creating spreadsheets and pivot tables and so on, that you save pretty regularly. You want to make sure that nothing goes wrong, nothing crashes, and you don't want to lose your work. So right off the bat, let's take a look at saving. Really simple. So I don't have any data in here just yet, but we can imagine that, hey, we've now created this super awesome spreadsheet, and now I want to save it to my computer or save it out to the network drive, whatever it might be. So inside of Excel, I'm just going to go to my File tab, top of the screen. Inside the File tab, down the left-hand side, you got all sorts of links here, and we're going to talk about several of these as we continue through this course. I've got an option for Save and an option for Save As. Now at this point, because this is a brand new workbook, I haven't saved it before, these two buttons are going to do the exact same thing. I can hit Save. This is going to take me to my Save As command. And in here, I can go browse for a location that I want to save this to. Now, because this is a Microsoft Office application, I do got locations such as SharePoint. If you do have SharePoint environments, I've got my OneDrive account, and I've got other locations. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and say Browse. I'll give that a click. This will open up my folder explorer on my computer or my Save As window. And here I can go navigate my computer. I can save that somewhere on my computer. Here I've got my file name, so I can call it whatever I need to. And I've got my file type. Now, just a quick little bit of information about the file type. Remember, we're working inside of Excel. We have an Excel workbook. You can see here, if I save this right now, I'm going to save an Excel workbook. This receives a .xlsx extension. Okay? That's the file type, the file extension. Now, just as an FYI, Excel also has a few other file types, but another common one is just XLS. When the 2007 edition of the Microsoft Office suite came out, all the Office applications, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and so on, they changed the file extensions. So prior to 2007, Excel used to be .xls, an Excel spreadsheet. Now it's a .xlsx. Okay? All the Office applications got an X at the end of it. PPTX for PowerPoint, DOCX for Word, and XLSX for Excel. But there is several other types here. If I go to the Save As type, you can see that there are several different types of documents that I can save this out as, or different types of documents. So that's it. So you go to the File tab. I can hit the arrow here to go back. I go to the File tab, go down into Save or Save As, and I go browse for the location that I want to save this to. Give it a name, save it, I'm good to go. All right, now later on, after you've saved a document, Save will just overwrite the previous edition, and you get to save your work. If I do a Save As with an existing document, this will allow me to rename the document to something else, and that way I get multiple copies of that one document. All right, again, that's simple. It's just inside the File tab. Go into there, you got your save commands right there. All right, try it out. We haven't really done a whole lot just yet, but this will give you an opportunity to jump into the application, go to File, Save, give it a name, save it on your computer someplace. You can trash it later. We really haven't done anything with it yet, but this is how you would save your document. All right.